Well, let's go. I got us live here. I'm going to do a little intro for us, and we're going to kick in and talk about some amazing things. So, hey, everybody, we're catching you on the live. Just give us a few seconds here to get acclimated and set up. And I've got a super guest, which I'm going to introduce here in a second. And let's go here. Oh, what's going on? Not allowing me to go live here. Why is that? Okay. All right. Okay. So there's always technical difficulties, Tone. For some reason, let me see what this is asking me here. You don't have enough available. Oh, what? This is interesting. Okay. All right. Well, we are still recording here, so we should be good, and I'll get the audio here as well. Why is that saying that? All right. Make sure we're good here. Let me turn up the volume. All right. Excuse me. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. No, we're going to do that again. Take 2.
Hey, real quick, Michael, just let you know, it's Jalan.
Jalan. How do you spell your last name? Jalan?
Yeah, Jalan. Yeah.
Yep. And take 2 or take 3. Welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. My name is Michael Hicks. I am the host of this awesome, super excited episode today. I get the opportunity to bring in a Milwaukee individual, and we connected not in person, but however in our socials, because there's so many like-minded things that he posts all the time, and I just love his content. Please welcome the one and only Tony Jalan. He is a seasoned sales leader. He's a coach. He's a speaker with over 25 years of experience in building and leading high-performance sales teams. And he basically started out as a humble sales rep. Please welcome to the show the leader himself, Tony Jalan. Tony, how are you?
Wow, let's go ahead and have that intro again because I'm pumped. Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
I appreciate you, man. You know, I want to kind of talk a little bit and get the listeners kind of caught up on how we organically met. We, believe it or not, Tony kind of lives in the same area as I have, but we have not met face to face, but we have met kind of virtually. And I think we just were talking about it before we even started recording. Is Tony kind of been watching my story kind of morph into where I am today. But enough about me, Tony. Tell us a little bit about, I know your bio here. Tell everybody, if you were to give the elevator speech to everybody, whoever's listening right now, tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to where you are today. And you got so many great accolades, which I'll get into a little bit later. But tell everybody, the listeners, about your story and how you are where you are today.
Great question. How did I get to where I'm at today? Well, it's definitely been a journey, right? Like sort of like life. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I'm actually originally from North Dakota. I moved from North Dakota to Wisconsin. I moved from the frozen tundra to tropical paradise. And I started out from a family that, we had very little means to get going. I come from 9 children, and there's a few things my parents taught me is to be good to people and to work hard and do what's right. And that's where I literally got into the sales world because my dad taught me how to go door knocking, to mow lawns way back in the day. It's like, hey, you know what? If you want something, you got to go out and get it.
That's a beautiful thing. And, is door knocking still a thing these days? Because, I'm an advocate of watching these real estate shows on Netflix. I don't binge because I think too much binging is another thing. That's a whole new tangent. But I really watch, and there's some people that still do door knocking. You're the sales guru. Do people still do those things? And is it valuable?
Absolutely. Actually, what I have a lot of people who knock on my door, everyone from roofers to pest control companies, and those guys are amazing. Like, I sit there and I break down of their whole approach.
Oh, okay.
When they're knocking at my door, I'm like, wow, like you really got a system down here.
That's amazing. Hey, I really like One, I love your content that you post. It's very like-minded to what I do as a life strategist, a life coach. And you talk a lot, and it's in your bio as well. You talk a lot about battling self-doubt and overcoming obstacles. Can you kind of go into that a little bit about what does that mean for you? And maybe someone that's listening and kind of stumbled on this podcast, or maybe they're an avid listener. And how do you overcome self-doubt, Tone? Because like literally, you went from humble beginnings to where you're at now, and we'll get into the big stages and stuff later. But tell us about how you overcome self-doubt. Tell us.
Well, I wish there was a magic bullet. I think still, I go through my periods of self doubt. I think a lot of it comes down to, am I worthy? Do I
Mm,
deserve it?
mm.
Um, Lacking of holding myself high.
Oh, got you.
And I think some of the ways in which I've overcome self doubt is simply by doing. Like action made me realize the stories that I was putting in my head of why I couldn't do XYZ or why I didn't deserve that next opportunity were a lot of times false because I was just making a story in my head and I wasn't taking action to pursue it. And I think the other part of it, when people think about overcoming self doubt, is they want to have success. People are striving to go ahead and be successful. And I learned not to do that. Stop striving to be successful
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and instead strive to add value.
Wow. That's so beautifully said. And what's interesting is I think when you get into that perspective, you can really get through that wall, right? I talk about that wall that's in front of us for success, right? That wall that you either break through, you go over, you go under, you go sideways. You figure out a way to get through that wall. And I think you said it beautifully right there. It's like, well, what kind of value can I provide instead of the constant, like, my goodness, I need to get this through. You also talk about your mindset is critical for success. You want to talk a little bit about that as well, Tony?
Yeah. I truly believe that your biggest enemy you're going to have to face, your biggest competitor you're going to have to face is the person looking back at you in the mirror every morning.
Wow. Wow.
And so many times we are crippling ourselves at the knees based on our self talk. There's a book by James Allen. I think it's James Allen wrote the book As a Man Thinketh. And he said in the book, our words become our thoughts become our beliefs, and
Mm.
our beliefs generate our results. So often I think is that we go in and paint this picture with our words of who we are and who we're not.
Ah, it's so unique and interesting that you said that because I teach this, and the words that we say is who we identify with. And how many times do you hear this? You may hear this even in the sales world that you're in. Oh, I'm so tired today. I'm so exhausted. Well, now you identified an I am statement with something. Now you're internally believe it. Instead, say something like, oh gosh, I feel this way. I feel tired. I feel exhausted. Because I think when we truly accept what we are and we say it, we become that identity. Do you agree with that,
I
Tony?
do. I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we talk a lot about, in terms of leadership growth. It comes down to awareness, like being aware where you're at. Like, you know what? I may not be at the physical being that I want to be at today. Okay. I'm aware of that. But now I want to acknowledge it. Right. And that's a different story right there, isn't it?
It totally
Like,
is, yeah.
it's like, okay, now I'm acknowledging it. I'm actually going to say it out loud. I'm aware of it, but I'm sort of going to hide it. I'm not going to say it to anybody. But then I'm going to acknowledge, I'm going to call a spade, and then take an action.
Yeah. And that can be hard for a lot of people. I mean, like let me ask you this. What's been your biggest struggle in the course of your career? So you started out with, what you called a humble, I think the exact words were humble sales rep to now territory sales. I mean, give us exactly your title now so I can make sure that we understand that right now. I think you're vice president of sales. Is that correct, Tony?
Correct, correct, correct.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been doing it for 25 years. What was the biggest struggle besides, you called it knocking yourself out at the knees, but What do you think the most, people start gigs and they start jobs and they go through the process. And also they don't like it and they just quit. What do you say to individuals, or maybe even what would you say to your younger self today if you had you as a coach today on how you could be a better salesperson or a better leader, a better coach, a better person? What would you say?
I think one, get clear on your values because I believe your values dictate your decisions. Like what are your non-negotiables? What are you not going to go ahead and bend for? I think that's number one. I think number two would be like be very clear on your outcome. I think everyone starts, I shouldn't say everyone, but I'll rewind here. I think all human progress is preceded by questions. When we ever get from point A to point B, it's a lot of times we thought of a question or we asked the question like, oh, why aren't I where I'm at, where I want to be right now? Well,
Mm,
why is this happening? And I think so often we start with the how. Oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And we get overwhelmed with the how, which then causes inaction. I remember when I was first starting out in advertising sales, um, even though prior, like 5, 6 years earlier, I was doing door to door sales for Kirby vacuums.
that's
And I
amazing.
just, I would just focus on, okay, my outcome today was I had to go ahead and pull on 25 doors. That's what
Mm,
the thing was. So that was, I was naive enough to think I just got to pull on 25 doors. Well, then fast forward to my advertising sales day. I remember I was sitting in this place called the Grand Cities Mall. And the reason why I was sitting there is that it was my third day on the job. I was sitting at my desk in the office, and the sales manager comes to me and says, "Tony, what are you doing?" I go, well, "I'm studying. I'm learning how to create advertising campaigns." She's like, "You're not going to make any money sitting at your desk. You got to get out."
mm.
I'm like, "Okay." So I drove around probably for an hour, and then I landed at the Grand Cities Mall in the foyer area where people were sitting to eat their food. And I sat there all day long for a while there, asking stuff like, "How am I going to go in and approach these people? What am I going to say?" Versus instead asking the question, the first question I should have been asking, okay, what's my outcome today that I want to achieve?
Mm.
What's the result that I'm after? And then the second question is, what are my reasons why for this? And then the third is the how. And I think, you know, when we realize that if we start with the outcome first and then understand the reasons why and like really clearly define it, one, it challenges if that's an outcome you want or not.
Mm.
Number one.
Yeah.
Well, why do you want that? Well, how do I want to feel when I get this? Oh, wait, maybe I don't really want that. Okay, then what
Wow.
is it? So that would be advice I would tell my younger self is like, I'd say, I want to make money. Great, who doesn't, right? Money is as important as it is for oxygen is to breathe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. It's okay, what's the outcome I want? Not like what do I want to do, but how do I want to live? And so I think that was some of the things where, you talk about how people started things. I started things when I was younger. I started businesses when I was younger. And when the shine went away, I'm like, oh, then it got hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you make excuses. Well, I'm thinking like if you're going to make an excuse, make an excuse to make things happen versus not.
Or have a solution if you're gonna have an excuse.
Right. Right. It's like I remember there was one time I was sitting down with one of my coaches and uh, I told her that I can't do something. And she leaned into me hard. And she goes, Tony, don't ever say that you can't do something. Just tell me that you're not willing.
Wow.
That's what
Wow.
I thought.
Yeah.
And she was right.
Powerful. She's 100% right. Like those are, in my coaching program, the biggest thing I tell my clients is there's four words that we get rid of right away. It's the can't, it's the
Hmm.
try, it's the but, and it's the because.
Yeah.
They're all synonymous with failure, and no, like our subconscious blocks it right away. We don't want to move forward, and that's why you're not successful. So that's just really, really well said. Tony, you had over 25 years of experience in this business. And I'm sure you had some absolutely amazing leaders And you've also probably had some really poor leaders. And I think all of us, in some capacity, we're all leaders. We could be leaders as simple as our household to maybe our job, whatever it may be, whether it's an engineer, a garbage man, whatever it might be, you can still be a leader. You can be a leader to society, you can be a leader for your family, like I alluded to. Give us what are some things that you really learned from poor leadership? Maybe a couple bullet points, and then what are some really good qualities you learned from a quality leader?
I think where I've seen poor leadership, and like I said, I've been in different industries over the years and been in business and done business consulting and etc. I think poor leaders love their title more than they love their people.
Wow, wow, yeah. I, that's an interesting direction, and I think you're right. You're right. So then, when that happens, if you are that person, that employee that has to deal with something like that, and if you're their coach, Tony, what do you say to them? How do they overcome that? Because I mean, burnout can occur if they're constantly micromanaging someone. Like, what do you say to them? Like, what would you say the next thing would be?
I would say, is it worth it to
But
stay in
I
that
got,
position?
I mean, it's such good money, Tony. It's such good money, and like, I got to support my family, and at my age, I don't know if I could find another job that's like that. What do you say then?
You're right. I agree. But how much energy are you dispensing?
Mm, mm, mm.
What is that impact having on your health? I go, so that's number one. I go, ask yourself the question, am I all in or not? Because if you're not all in, you're in the way. I think number one is um, choose to develop a relationship with them. Because at the end of the day, they're human beings too. There's reasons why they're reacting the way they are. And sometimes people are just jerks, and it is what it is. I think, secondly, establish boundaries. And that may be scary because it was scary for me. I had a leader once that, um, working in a remote role, he went to the extent of calling one of my managers because I didn't answer an email right away. And I learned that you also got to lead up. You've got to go ahead and communicate what's going on. Because most of the reasons why we feel like we're getting micromanaged is because of lack of communication. So one of the things you could do is, hey, I really want to grow here and get better. In what ways would you like me to communicate with you so I can learn and be better? Again, questions, right? All human progress is preceded by a question. I remember one year I felt that I wasn't really connected with some leaders. And um, I made it one of my intentions to connect with them. I already said, I'm going to intentionally find ways to connect with them as a human being. I did. It was amazing how I happened, but just simply stating the intention and writing it down.
Hmm.
Um, and the third is, life doesn't get easier. We just get better at handling it.
Does that come with age, you think, or does that come with resilience, anti-fragility? What do you, how, when you say get better at it, like, what does that mean?
Um, I think you got to go through the struggle in order to grow.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, think about it this way: growth doesn't happen on the mountaintop; it happens in the valley. When I had this situation with this one leader, where it was actually at moments good, at other moments toxic.
Hmm.
When I see them call me, I'd be like, oh crap, what are they going to ask me? Because they only called me, I felt, when there was something up. But then I got to a breaking point when we had a very intense call where um, they said things to me in front of my colleagues, and even my colleagues emailed me afterwards going, Tony, are you okay? It was that bad.
Wow.
And I sat there. And I'm like, I make good income, but is it worth this? And I said no. But then I asked myself, how am I part of this though?
I love it.
How am I also responsible for this? I looked at myself first.
Good for you. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember sitting there Sunday evening calling him up and saying, we need to have a conversation. I'm like, listen, that call on Friday sucked. I felt terrible afterwards. And I want to first off let you know that under no uncertain terms will I go ahead and accept and allow that kind of language to be spoken to me again. And I go, I want to be clear on that. Secondly, though, I also want to take some responsibility into the situation. When you were asking certain things of me, I just kept on saying yes, 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 yes. Even though my gut told me I should slow down and say no. But because I didn't say no, you didn't know otherwise,
Hmm.
and I created this complete mess.
Wow.
I go, so this is on me. So we had a very transparent conversation at that moment. And our relationship did get better after that. Because
It,
unfortunately, people have not mastered art of mind reading.
well, yeah, and just setting up quality boundaries, which you talk about, and how vital was that? Like, I'm sure too, you almost felt like an elephant was off of you. Like it
Oh
probably
yeah.
was a sense of you had more of an opportunity to breathe. Because I can only, I used empathy on that conversation that you just said, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have had that, or even still have that piece. But I think what's unique is I love how you are really, and you talk about this in your bio as well as you talk about self awareness, Tony, and you really embody that because you're right. If there's a conflict by any means, well, you're half of the issue. So you got to take some ownership as well. And I really like how you really self reflected in that situation. It was like, I I was just saying yes because that's all I knew. And when I was saying yes, I was drowning myself. And probably that also happened, then had issues with your relationships, with your family. Like, I'm sure that all kind of like steamrolled as well, right? Like, would you
Oh,
agree?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned through that experience, even a couple of years later, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And are
Mm,
you going to be okay with saying no to that something else?
wow. Wow. That's really, really well said. Yeah. Yeah. That's remarkable. So during this journey, and you talked about there's four, you say, four positive fundamental mindsets that quality leaders must have. You talked about this. You talked about self awareness. You talked about acknowledging hard realities. You talked about taking intentional action. What does intentional action actually mean? What does that mean? If you were to tell someone to take some, I think you kind of said it, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the intentional action piece, Tony?
Yeah. I think you got to be clear again on what's your outcome. What outcome are you after? Right. And then why are you after that outcome? And then you figure out how I'm going to go about it. So, for example, um, say, for example, I want to release 10 pounds. That's a result. Notice I didn't say lose. Because
Yeah.
when you lose something, you
Oh,
want to go
that's
find it. And I don't want to find it again. So I'm going to
wow.
release it.
I like that. I like that.
So I want to release 10 pounds. And the reasons why, oh, for this, this, this. And I think your reasons got to be compelling. They can't be niceties. You got to be raw with them. And you got to actually write them down and make it real. And the how would be the intentional action, right? How I'm going to do that. Okay. For this week only, I'm going to take a picture of everything that I eat. That's intentional action. And it's measurable. You know, I want to be more connected with those that I love. Okay, I'm going to schedule it because if it doesn't get scheduled, it doesn't get done in my
Mm,
calendar.
mm. Yep.
Like, how many times have you saw some old friends or whatnot? And Michael, you probably experienced this with me. I'm like, are people here? Hey, I want to get together. I want to get together. Great. Let's grab
Yeah.
our calendars. And if you want to
Right.
ever want to find out if people that you're saying they say that we should get together sometime really want to get together, pull out your phone at that moment and say, great, let's do this. And you'll be surprised. Well, I don't have my on my calendar updated. Let's get back together later. Okay. Truth matter is, you didn't really want to get together.
Mm, that's true. And can I just let's call a spade because this is what exactly happened. This is funny that you talk about this, Tony. Is like we got to get together. We got to get together. And maybe it's 7 months, 8 months later. Here we are. We're doing a podcast. And this is how we got together. But I feel you, man. You're 100% correct with that. And I love it. And that's a good piece, you guys. If you're having that conversation, get the calendar out right then and there. Book the time. And hey, you should have one master calendar, y'all. You should have one master calendar. Everything goes on there. Hey,
Facts.
hey, Tony, tell us. I know you're a big John Maxwell guy, and I love that about you. And that's why I think we're so like-minded because a lot of that is about the growth journey and John Maxwell. What is one of the? And you're actually a certified coach from his program. What was the biggest accolade and biggest golden nugget that you kind of took away from that program and that coaching? And what would you share to the listeners?
It's been quite a long time. It's going over a decade now. Um, God, there's a lot. I mean, if you think about John Maxwell, he's written over 100 books. And, he's known as one of the leader of leaders. Um, I would say that everything rises and falls on leadership. That's your personal life, that's your relationships, that's your professional life. Everything rises and falls on leadership, and more so self leadership.
Hmm. That's the biggest one.
Hmm.
Like I grew up. It's interesting because I had a mindset coach on, or not a mindset, a manifestation coach on author on our podcast, and she talked about how like when we were growing up, parents would be like, "Oh," my mom would always say, and we were poor, like welfare. Went to got the free cheese, got the free meals at the church, like
You
parents
too?
were, yeah, that's
That,
my,
that
my
that cheese in a white box in like
yes, yes,
silver thing, you
yes.
get that. Like, you go and make some great mac and cheese out of it. You get rice and beans going on. Heck, and then when you went to the Christmas party at the church, you'd hope to see if they have little extra gifts that you can get one extra present. Yeah,
Man, so
I've been there. I know.
and you know what's so interesting is about that, and the story that my mom would always say to me, Michael, money doesn't grow on trees. Well, when she said that, that sets such a negative tone into our system, and then we digest it, and as we grow, I mean, let's be honest. There's trillions of dollars that are going through banks every single day. And then when you have that thing, that's something that you really got to overcome. So I bring that to this question, Tony. Is you're the head sales guy. You're leading these sales people, and they're just this one guy's just struggling. One gal just they're just struggling. Like, how do you? Where do you start? How do you get them acclimated? I mean, we talked a lot about mindset stuff already. I'm just curious on how you would approach that. You're asked to speak at a position of you got all these salespeople and you got people that are just starting that are really struggling. And what do you say to them to get them out of that realm, I guess, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Hmm. What do I get? What do I say to someone who might be struggling in sales to get them out of that?
Yeah.
I would tell them to stop and pause and get very clear on what is it you want and why do you want it. And then I would also say, when you're answering the, why you want it, answer this question. If you don't do it, what's going to happen? If you don't make those 25 calls today, well, what's going to happen?
Hmm.
If you don't go ahead and, do that email blast, what's going to happen? If you don't go ahead and, become a master of sales processes, right? Remember, we talked about earlier, stop chasing success, start
Yeah.
chasing value. And ask yourself, like, how can I bring more value to the world? How can I become a master of what I do and bring value to others? Because I think a lot of times when you're struggling, it's because you're making it about you.
Mm. Mm.
And yes, you got bills to pay. You got kids to feed, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's already out there for you for the taking. Because look around, you might be struggling, but there's a lot of people succeeding. Sorry, we all bleed red. Hello.
Yeah, right.
And success is not, they don't have a monopoly on it. And neither do we have a monopoly on struggle. So I think that's number one, is really get clear on your outcome and why you want it. And then, if you don't do it, what's the nightmare? I am personally more motivated by the nightmare than I am the dream.
Wow.
Because when I sit there and think, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? When I was in sales, I remember this when I first got started in the payments industry. 100% commission, no base salary, none of that. But I truly believe that I was adding value to others. And I remember there was a moment where, you get that call of reluctance.
Hmm.
I'm like, what scares me more? That no or letting down my family?
Right.
There is no that's worse than letting down my family. And I work to keep that in my perspective.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. And do you follow Elliot? He's the big guru right now for sales, right? You know what I'm talking about?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the guy that's like, what if they took your family? Would you
Oh,
make a hundred call? Yeah, you know what
the
I'm talking
hardcore
about?
guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
hardcore guy, yeah.
yeah.
But I think too though, like, I don't know. You know, when people always talk about sales, always be closed and always be closed. I'm like, you know what? No. Always be curious.
Oh,
Because curiosity and resistance cannot coexist. If you're curious enough about the other person, you're going to understand what's important to them and how you can serve them. I was recently on a call the week before last, and I was asked the question like, well, what if you're not able to provide to them, what they want? I go, well, first thing, I'm going to ask why they want it and gain an understanding. Like, what result do they want to get out of that XYZ product or service? And if I'm still not able to go ahead and fulfill that need, I call it out
hmm.
because I don't want to remember what I said.
Oh,
Because there's so much abundance out there. There's so much opportunity out there today. I mean, people realize, like, listen, you know, I used to really track my numbers like nobody's business. So that's one thing too. It's like if you're in outside sales or any kind of business whatsoever, you got to know your numbers. Because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
wow, yeah,
Because again, it goes back to that awareness piece we talked about, right?
sure
You got to be
does.
aware of what's going on. You got to acknowledge it. You got to take action. You got to wrap it up with some accountability.
You know, you're really big on emotional intelligence, and I love that. And again, another reason why I think you're on the podcast and we're so like-minded. And Talk to everybody. Why is emotional intelligence important, not just for your career, but also for relationships, your kids? And you are a father, correct?
I am
Yeah,
father of
and
two
how,
kids.
two kids, and I because I know, but tell the listeners like how old are your kiddos? They're in high school, right?
My son's graduating high school this year. My daughter's
Okay.
already out of high school, so we'll be empty nesters this year,
Wow,
as they say.
that's huge too for a relationship perspective. And I want to get into that. I'm going to shelf that right now. But um, talk to me a little bit about the importance of emotional intelligence and why, as a father of a household, or even a mother of a household, whatever it might be, why is it so important not only for the business aspect but for also personal relationships?
Oh, there's so many reasons why. I think um, the more self-aware you are, the less reactive you're going to be,
Hmm.
and the more self-aware you are, the more effectively you can be in managing your emotions. I read this quote the other day: "The speech that you'll regret is the speech given out of anger."
Ah, shelf that for a second. I want to just chime in. This is why I tell everybody, if you're upset about something and somebody sends you an email or whatever it might be, draft it. Don't send it or write it. Sit on it for 24 hours. And it's interesting how your perspective changes. Am I right on that?
Oh, I say this often: be quick to listen and slow to speak.
Mm. That can be hard to do though, right? And I know as
Oh,
my journey individually is, it's like, being a father, a single father, divorced for over 9 years. You sometimes the other half will say something to you that really fires you up. And I used to be the person that would be like, boom, 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 send. What I've learned now, though, you take it, you digest it, and I love what you said earlier. You're like, how am I a part of this? How am I? I'll draft it out of anger. I will. But we also know that when our emotions are high, with what we're talking about, emotional intelligence, is when we're a state of anger, whatever it might be, we don't think logically. It's just, we're not there. Our brains do not go. But when you can really sit on it, digest it, repeat, come back, I've really learned that. But what else would you say about emotional intelligence? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think, Tony?
I think it also helps you manage stress,
Mm, mm.
because I think so often. I mean, the more self-aware of yourself you are, it's like, I'll say, for example, when I'm all of a sudden feeling like I am being pressured or in a stressful situation, I've learned how to recognize my triggers. So,
Oh,
for example, my mouth gets really dry,
interesting. Yeah.
and I'll tell people, I'm like, listen, you don't like when you get mad. You don't like when you burst out at people. You don't like when you're reactive versus responsive. So, when's the last time you reflected on what caused it? What were the triggers and the signs that it was happening?
Mm, 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 mm.
Because then, once you call it out, you're aware, you acknowledge it. Okay, wait a second, it's starting to happen again. Then you can now come up with strategies to overcome that. I mean, there's no secret to success. It's all about systems.
And it's all about belief. It's all about believing in yourself too, right? Like at the end of the day, it's all about truly believing and knowing that you are capable. That's what it's about. And if you're lying to yourself continually every single day, then I don't think success can happen. What do you think about that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, think about this. We are here today. You, me, everyone watching and listening to this have all gone through things that we thought it was the worst day of our lives.
Oh, preach. Yeah.
And yet we're here today.
Mm, mm.
Even our worst days are still good days. Because a lot of times we take one moment out of 24 hours and turn it into 24 hours. We did that. We chose to do that. Well, they made me mad. No, you gave them permission. Eleanor Roosevelt said that no one has control over your emotions unless you give them permission. I was at a networking meeting years ago, and for some weird reason, Michael, I decided not to stand up and introduce myself.
Okay.
And I just got done reading this book called The Book of Knowledge or something like that. And this guy said when everyone was done, because people didn't know me there, you didn't introduce yourself. I'm like, no, I didn't. He goes, I don't know if I like that. And don't ask me why I respond the way I did, but I did. I go, it's your thought, own it.
I love it.
And
Right.
he laughed, but it is,
Wow. It's powerful
And
too. Yeah.
so I think at the end of the day, it's like the stories are what we make of them. It can be an anthill or Mount Everest, and yeah, those things are not convenient when they happen. They suck, to be blunt, but you still get to tell the story.
Mm,
Did anyone die or go to jail?
mm.
And I know that it's drastic when I say it to people often, oh, did anyone die or go to jail? They're like, no, no, okay then. And why are we giving this all this negative energy?
Mm, mm.
Because what we focus on is what expands in our life.
Ah, yeah.
And
Go finish, and I got something I want to. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've done it. I'm guilty of it. I mean, you got to experience, the emotional roller coaster. You're a human being. It's one of the gifts that we've been given as human beings, right? But my wife says this: you can feel the way you feel, and just don't stay there.
Hmm. You know, I think of what you just said, and I think of you're right, and our mind controls so much, and that's what I teach to my clients is we never have a bad day, Tony. We may be we may have a bad moment, maybe a bad 5 minutes, but it's what you teach yourself and how you respond on how day continues.
Mhm.
I think it's so vital and so important that we learn gratitude, right? And we learn how to positive habit stack something. If we do something we don't like, but habit stack it with something positive so that you can then be thankful for something that happens. And when we fill gratitude into our lives and we do it daily when we're struggling, it's immense gratification for us to stay positive. And it's well said because I don't think like we all don't have bad days. Like oh man, and that's the thing too. And I talk about this on my reels and my even on a podcast is like, oh, it's Monday. Well, what? Why is that? Why is that a bad thing? Like, man, it's a great day to be alive. It's actually a country song, I think it is.
Oh,
But it's like,
that's one of my favorite songs, by the way, Travis Tritt.
is it?
It's a great
Yes.
day to be
Be
alive. Yeah.
alive. Yes. My goodness. This is amazing. I love this. And but it's just another opportunity. And I believe this, my goal in my life is to say good morning to as many people as I can. And I always find it so interesting, Tony, and so unique. And I'm curious on what your perception is on this is people's attitudes are way different on Mondays versus Fridays. It's because, sadly, they live for a third of their life, which is just the weekend. That's just so sad to me. And I feel, and if you guys are those of you listening, podcast or business plug here, come see me, come talk to me. Your Monday should be the best day of the week because it's an opportunity, or maybe it's Sundays, because Sunday's technically the start of the week. But however, but Mondays are a great way to create momentum. Create. I like to do the most I can on Mondays because I love it. I love that. And it's a great day to be alive. But what do you think about that? Do you find that in the sales world, your sales reps, and I'm going to talk about all your accolades before we get off the call here today, are all your accolades and all of that, like, do you find that people struggle on Mondays more so than on Fridays? And if so, what do you say to them?
In the words of Jocko Willink, good.
I'm not familiar with him. Tell me, who's that?
Oh, he's a ex Navy SEAL. He talks about how discipline equals freedom. You know, I work to be empathetic
Mm,
when people are going through things.
hmm
And I ask myself, number one, like, how long have you been dealing with this? Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I think you literally have to wake up in the morning and make the choice. Because attitude isn't everything, yet attitude is the difference maker.
mm.
And people may sometimes when they know me, they think, "Oh, Tony's always positive." I'm like, no, I sometimes wake up in the morning, feeling a little pissy, and I have to be self-aware and catch myself. Oops, I just lost one of my earbuds.
You're good.
Uh, um, and say, "Today is a great day. Today is going to be a great day." I have to literally program my computer, which is this, because I am the programmer of this, and
Love it.
say, today is going to be a great day. Today is going to be a great day. And I have to use your body, and there's a whole human psychology based on that. Um, and I literally go, today is going to be a great day. Today is going to be a great day. Who can I add value to today? Because again, all human progress is preceded by questions. And I think if someone's listening to this and they're struggling today, hey, you're struggling for reasons. And write down those reasons. Why am I
Mm.
struggling?
Yep.
And then I'm gonna tell you, if over 20% of those reasons you're pointing to someone else, the weather, the market,
The
those are
president.
all oh yeah, those are all out of your control.
I love
Focus
it.
on the things that are within your control. Because I may not control what happens for me. Notice I said what happens for me, not to me. I do control how I respond to it, though.
Mm.
And that will equal my outcome. Your response than the event itself.
Tony, are you still with me on YouTube? Did you disconnect? Or you're good?
Yeah, there
You're
was a call that came in real quick there.
okay. Okay.
So it still
Come
says I'm
back.
live with you right now.
I don't see you. Are you on there?
Oh, it looks like it froze because a live call came in here. You want me to log back in real quick on it?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go here.
Hmm. All right. Cool. There we go. There we go. We're coming back in. There you are. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Cool. All right. So I want to transition a little bit. It was really well said, Tony, and I wish I would have connected with you sooner. I mean, it's two peas in a pod right here, and I appreciate your input on everything today. You recently had talked. I want to get a little personal here. You recently talked a little bit about you're going to be an empty nester, and that's a big transition, right? You and your wife have been married for how many years?
Over 20 years now.
Wow, 20 years is a long time. One word that describes your relationship and why it's so successful. Go.
One word to describe our relationship and why we're successful.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a powerful one. I know. You got to help us, folks that are still in that realm yet, still, still figuring things
Um,
out.
One word, the reason why we're at where we're at.
Yeah.
Grace.
Ah, beautiful. That's beautiful, man. It's it's interesting. I did a whole kind of thing, a week thing on actual grace, and the pastor at the church told the congregation that he talked about how be open to grace, pray for grace. And that week, Tony, I had never in my life been so amazed at the grace that I got. And it even gets me emotional, even speaking about it. I'll tell a quick story here. I went to the grocery store, and I'm good financially. I'm good, but I'm shopping. My cart's full, right? My cart is full. It is full to the brim. As I'm about to get into the checkout, excuse me, sir. I turn around. I thought I dropped something. Excuse me, sir. I I just can I just get that for you? And I like dumbfounded, right? Like looked around, was like, are you talking to me? Because I often I'll pay forward. You know what I mean? Go to Subway or I'll get somebody at the grocery store. I got them. I got them. I got them. But today it happened to me, or that day I should say. And I bet you my bill was like 370. She paid for everything. And then I just asked her. I said, why? And she just said because I was told to do so. And I was like, can I at least get your name so I can, because being an influencer that I am, and a podcaster and a coach and all this stuff, because I was just like, I just want to plug you. And she's like, no. She's got to just tell you this. I'm a traveling nurse. I get paid very well, and I just want to bless you today, Tony. I got in the car and I sobbed. I
Mhm.
sobbed because it's like it's so beautiful when we are open to grace, and that's what I alluded to earlier. Like grace is one of the most beautiful things that we have. And when we learn how to accept it and use it, it is one of the most powerful tools. And I really appreciate that story. And so now that you're an empty nester out, or they're going to be out, how is this going to change the relationship? Because like literally, as a parent, it's very different. How is it going to change it, or is it going to change? Are you going to have more dates? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
That's a question and a great question. And it's ironic that you ask it because each year we choose one word to help guide our life for the year. Because you can forget about goals and all the things you want. This year, the word that came to me was be.
Be.
It was just be. And when we come up with our one word, we ask ourselves like three questions. Uh, what's in my way? What do I need? And what do I need to let go? And then from there, I received that one word.
Wow.
And that becomes your compass, your theme for the year. And mine's been be. And it came to me in December. I'm like, why be? Like, I don't know. Well, this is a year of a lot of lasts, so to speak.
Hmm.
And, you know, uh, I have my son, and I'm a volleyball coach, and there's a lot of kids that coach are now becoming seniors, and they've
Yeah.
shared a lot of amazing things with me. And what's going to change? Well, he's not going to be here in the house anymore. He's going off to college. He's playing volleyball at Calvin University. Shout out to Ezekiel. Proud of you for all your hard work there. Um, and I'm excited. I'm excited for this next chapter. I think, I was told this years ago, you don't date to marry, but you marry to date.
Yes, well said.
And I think, it's going to give me an opportunity to be more intentional on that part of it. Um, because, there was a time in life when we didn't have kids.
Totally.
We get to go back to that in a lot of ways, right? And I'm excited about that. I think, because him and I are great friends. Like, we talk about a lot of different things. We ride to practices together. And you're gonna get. I think there's my allergies are acting up all of a sudden, like that. um, but I remember when I was younger with my own dad. Yeah, I remember he said, when I was like 15, 16 years, like, my job got done. I'm just here to go ahead and mentor you along. He didn't say mentor, but be your best cheerleader now.
Yeah.
And I look at like the young man he has become. He's very, values centered. He works incredibly hard. He's not afraid to say no.
Hmm.
He cares for people, and that gives me solace knowing that my wife and we played a part in that.
100%.
And I think it's not. It's just a new chapter, and life wasn't meant to be all one big chapter. It was meant to be a series of chapters. So, what's going to change? Well, one thing I know is that I'm going to just be more in the present moment, probably, and enjoy my time with my wife. I know that I am going to be excited to see his journey and hear about his journey in college. Um, I'm going to be wondering if he's going to do some of the same things that I did when I went to college. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a choice now to be happy with it. And I get some people who are scared. I remember years ago I was sitting at a cafe and it was a group of ladies, and one of the ladies said, "I don't know what we're gonna do when our son graduates."
Yeah. Yeah.
The other lady said, "Well, why?"
Hmm.
And I heard this. I was like, "Holy smokes!" He goes, "I don't know who my husband is anymore."
Hmm.
Because so many people's lives revolve around their kids, and our kids. I mean, a lot of lives do revolve around it. But that's again, you gotta make it set intentions, right?
Totally do. Yeah.
You know,
No.
and then at the same time, if you're in your empty nester, I think you just gotta call it, however you're all feeling. Like sometimes we want to hide behind the closed door, like, and not recognize how we feel. You just got to be aware of it. Like again, leadership growth happens to awareness, acknowledging, and then action behind
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing though too. I know, a lot of people struggle
it.
from that because it's a whole new different perspective. It's almost like you're reconnecting with your spouse again, and but it's what a great opportunity it is. And Tony, beautiful, and I appreciate the vulnerability there and sharing with everybody about that. And as we're wrapping up today, I want to kind of tell everybody, our listeners out there, here's some of the things that Tony has achieved during his career, his successful career. Six times number one division sales manager, North Central Region. Five times top business partnership development champion. Chairman's Club winner, where he generated 1.8 million plus in revenue. and 2 million plus in revenue another year. Number 2, top performer platinum division manager nationwide. Number 3, top performer performing division manager nationwide. And also, this is really cool too, he was also rookie of the year. So as we are concluding in today's podcast, Tony, what are some final words? I'm going to ask also how they can get a hold of you, et cetera, here in a second. But what are some final things that you would love to tell our listeners that maybe need more direction, maybe need to hire a coach, maybe need some inspiration? What do you say to them?
Well, first thing I want to mention is that I appreciate you recognizing me for the different achievements. The achievements that don't show up always on paper are the ones actually that I'm even more proud of. Is that the leaders that we developed? Over 20 people got promoted underneath my leadership over this span of time, and for that, it goes back to how did I add value to others? Did we help others rise up? So I just want to mention that because there's people out there, that we know we got to make a true difference in their lives. And that's what gets me excited about every day. I think, if someone could be stuck, and I love talking to people who are stuck because I've been there, right? We want to help you get unstuck and break through. Be open. My life is an example of what mentorship means. I am a product of mentorship. I wouldn't be at where I'm at today without the incredible mentors and coaches and people that I've had in my life. 100% without a shadow of a doubt. And someone may go, well, I don't know where to start. It could be a book and author. Like when I was 18 years old, I read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. He became one of my mentors.
Yeah.
John Maxwell, I never forget when I was 24 years old, I saw him speak and I wrote it on a yellow piece of notebook and said, one day I'm going to be part of your team.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then I became part of that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, so that's number one, be open to it. Number two, if you don't ask, you don't get. Always ask. What's the worst thing going to happen? Your dad will go to jail?
Right.
Third was write your vision to paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the good books that I read says, write your vision to paper so the person that reads it can run with it. If it's not documented, it doesn't exist. And then I think finally, find someone that, that you can be in a safe space with, to talk to share your goals, your dreams, and your fears, your nightmares.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I think once you can do that, they no longer can hold you prisoner.
Oh, wow! You got some good marketing things on this podcast today. I appreciate it. It's going to be beautifully said. Hey, what book are you currently reading?
Florence Shen's The Game of Life and How to Play It.
How far along are you?
I'm now on my third time reading it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners why you read it so much. It's kind of like this, like The Art of War. I have to. Do you kind of read that one too a lot too? The Art of War.
I've read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Yes.
Yeah.
I've read
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
I've felt for years I was a very positive person.
Hmm.
I felt that, and sometimes people mistake positivity for naivety. I can't say that word. I shouldn't say can. I'm not saying it right now. But when I'm positive because I believe that we can get through it.
100%.
That's the reason why. Like, yeah, can this suck right now? Sure, but it's not going to last. You're going to get through it.
Yep. Yep.
But this book really helped me become more consciously aware of the words that I was speaking. And how you say it is it makes such a difference. Um, and in that book, it made me realize, like, man, how can I say this differently? For example, losing versus releasing.
Ah, or losing versus learning.
Right. So I really appreciate that book. Um, and then the other one I'm reading is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's a
Okay.
former hostage negotiator.
Okay.
And he just talks about tactical empathy, things like that. And um, yeah, those are two books I read. And the one book that I read every day is my good book. I love the book of Proverbs.
That's a great book. I have a small little thing right by my bed as well.
Yeah.
Reflect on that as well. Yeah, that's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Hey Tony, how can everybody, our listeners, get a hold of you? Give us all your handles, your credentials, your emails, website, whatever you want to give. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Tony Jalan Leadership Mindset. That's Jalan, last name spelled. Also on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. So you can find me definitely on LinkedIn and just go ahead and send me a direct message that way. I don't do smoke signals anymore because I'm not good at starting fires. um, but those are two main ways. LinkedIn, Instagram are two great ways to go ahead and get a hold of me.
I love it. I love it. Well, you heard it all here today, you guys, on Framing New Heights. And as always, follow along with me on this, Tony. 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always stay flex. Get them up there, Tone. Stay
Let's
flex.
go. Let's go, Michael. Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me on today. And man, again, I'm just so excited for you
Thank
and
you,
the
boss.
future that you're building and for you and your daughter. And man, the lid is off.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna quick here, and I just want to finish up here. Let me just finish this live here. Hold on one second.